Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another Insights from Women Leaders event. My name is Rola Kaakeh, and I'm the CEO of Salus Vitae Group, and I'll be the host for the event. Now, a little background on the Insights from Women Leaders series, especially those that are new to the series. We launched this series in October of 2020 as a platform to hear from various women leaders with varied backgrounds and perspectives on the topics of leadership, addressing current and future challenges, what skills we need moving forward, and how their experiences have shaped their outlook. The goal is to learn from women thought leaders and decision makers to empower current and future leaders, both men and women, to positively impact their organizations. Now, diversity of thought, experiences, industries, education, and training is important to us, as it highlights the mosaic of perspectives that are represented in different settings that help drive decision-making and positive change. Now, our guests have included leaders from various organizations across the globe. Their backgrounds are diverse, their accomplishments many, and the insights and perspectives that they provided are extremely valuable. Now, I encourage everyone to check out the recordings of previous guest leaders if you haven't already done so, and they're all available on our website. Now, today, over the course of an hour, we ask our guest leader a number of questions. I will start, and then we'll open it up to the audience questions. So please submit any questions that you may have in the Q&A box. Now, we encourage you both during and after the event to post any key takeaways that you have on various social media platforms, and you're welcome to tag us at Salus Vitae Group. We always love hearing how you benefited from the various insights and experiences of our distinguished guest leaders. Now, this session is recorded and will be available for replay after the event. Now, let's go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome our guest leader today, Dr. Joan Reede. Dr. Reede has a lifelong passion for and experience with mentoring and supporting diversity in the biosciences. She is Harvard Medical School's first Dean for Diversity and Community Partnership, and she's responsible for the development and management of comprehensive programs that provides leadership, guidance, and support to promote the increased recruitment, retention, and advancement of underrepresented minority faculty. She also serves in a number of other positions, including Faculty Director of Community Outreach at Harvard Medical School, Professor at the medical school, and at Harvard's School of Public Health, and Assistant in Health Policy at Massachusetts General Hospital. Now, while at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Reede has created more than 20 diversity and leadership focused programs, including founding the Harvard Medical School Minority Faculty Development Program and the Biomedical Science Careers Program. Now, before joining Harvard, she served as the medical director of a Boston community health center and worked as a pediatrician in community and academic health centers, juvenile prisons, and public schools. She has held a number of advisory roles, including serving on the Health and Human Resources Advisory Committee on Minority Health and the Secretary's Advisory Committee to the Director of the NIH. Now, in 2020, she became an American Association for the Advancement of Science Fellow. She graduated from Brown University and Mount Sinai School of Medicine, and she holds an MPH and Master's in Health Policy Management from Harvard School of Public Health and an MBA from Boston University. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful.
Thank you. So, okay, I'm very excited about this conversation. And so you will notice, especially for those that are returning in the series, we ask all of our guest leaders very similar questions. And we always start with the same first question, especially as we transition from the bios and the backgrounds. Did you expect to be where you are today?
Not at all. Not at all. I think fairly early on, I decided I wanted to be in the health professions. That's like middle school, a doctor by 7th grade, but had no real idea of the kind of opportunities or paths that existed. Never really thought I'd be at Harvard or have a role at Harvard, and never really thought about being in a leadership position. However, if I look back on my life and my career and the decisions I've made, I've always positioned myself in places where I thought I could make a difference. Didn't think of it as leadership, but could make a difference. So I remember even from high school, serving on the committee that rewrote the town charter. I mean, things that you don't think about in high school, and didn't think of it as leadership, but thought it would be nice to have a student and a young person's voice weighing in that space. So never thought I'd be here. but I guess my family's not surprised I'm here. So
It's always nice to see, like, sometimes when you think back and think that, oh, I didn't expect this, and you ask around thinking you're going to expect the same response, everyone's like, no, we did. We thought this is definitely you. So I like that.
you know, the high school yearbook of what you're going to do and you
Yeah.
know, most likely to succeed and all that, that was there, but who knew what success meant?
Yeah, very true. And at what point did you know that there would be specific titles associated with that? I think that general theme, like you said, of they knew that you would probably, and you knew that you would make a difference somehow in the different settings, but attaching a specific title or name to it might look very different. So I like that. So in this series too, we always start with focusing on the future. So we first talk about the future just to kind of think forward a little bit, and then we'll kind of come back and talk about all the exciting things you worked on and are currently working on. So when you start thinking about your future, what's in your future? What do you want your legacy to be?
You know, my future, so you've already said, my future is not about titles. Nothing I do is really about titles. I think of my future as trying to always be in a place where I can make a difference, where I can be a part of opening doors for others, of not just opening doors, but like, you know, putting that footstop in so that it can't close behind them and can't close behind other people. And then just watching them blossom and grow. So I think of it from both watching my grandchildren, so that's that personal part of my future, and then watching the people that I've had this privilege to educate and train and mentor, who are amazing, just become more and more amazing. So that's my future. That's what I do now. That's what I want to do as I move forward.
I absolutely love the distinction. So we hear from a lot of guest leaders in general, the whole part about opening doors and allowing more people to come. But where I smiled, and especially where I smiled, is when you said, how do we make sure that the door stays open? Or how do we make sure that there's some sort of stop so that even if you open it or one person opens it, that it doesn't automatically close? And it's just kind of like within that, you know, the room spaces, within the conversations, within the topics, I think those are very important. So I absolutely love that distinction, because I feel like it adds to a lot of what's been said, but it gets you into that mentality. It's that it's not just your responsibility. Your responsibility too is to open it, but if you can also help keep it open, it's even better. So
and work with others who understand that part of their responsibility is to keep it open. That we're all part of a continuum. And we will accomplish some things while we're here, but the work that we do has to go on beyond, which means that we have to have people coming behind us. So.
Yeah. So you also kind of the transfer of power, in the sense that you might be the person opening it, but you can give the authority and actually empower those to keep it open, which is also
open and open it wider. I mean, it's sort of this implicit dream that what they are going to do is so far extend beyond anything I could even imagine. And so understanding that it will just grow. And I have no idea what they'll do, but it will be amazing, whatever it is.
So then now, as you say this, and we've talked a little bit about maybe how your past outlook is, that you've always kind of thought about this being intentional, being in environments where you can make a difference or do that. But have there been maybe past or present experiences that continue to shape your outlook, or maybe emphasize this point for you? Or is there a point in your career where you just realized that this is something that was very important to me, or has it always been?
So, you know, I'm deeply involved in education, and it took me forever to figure out that that's where I belonged, even though I been involved in education forever. But it's like, you know, light dawning on Marblehead. I just didn't get it for a long time. It's just where I ended up. But if I had to say this sort of connection from past to present and what drives me moving forward, it comes from how I was raised. It comes from, you know, I had this privilege of growing up with these amazing women around me, and just remarkable, bright, talented, brave women who were all about, you know, they were all about family, they were all about God, and doing something with your life. And this understanding that we have come this far, but there's still so much further that we have to go. And our job while we are here is to continue to take us down the road. So anything that I do now is part of that continuing to take us down the road. And the people that hold me up are what I call the ladies. You know, these, you know, different levels of education, different backgrounds, but all remarkable.
And sometimes you don't know necessarily how much impact and influence they have on you until you even have sometimes a simple conversation with them, or try to kind of pick their brain about a specific topic, and then kind of it transfers across. And I think it's definitely kind of encouraging, and it definitely keeps you thriving for more, because when you see those types of exceptional women doing great things, or even whoever you surround yourself with, it's definitely, it keeps you going. Right? Because I'm sure in a lot of the topic areas you've been focusing on, it can also probably be very tiring in the sense that they're big topics. You want to address various things. So is that kind of what also pushes you to continue to create those spaces and conversations around those?
It's interesting because I guess I don't think of them as super big topics. They're just realities. And so the women that I'm talking about are women in my family. They're my grandmother who went to middle school, you know, my mother who graduated from college the year I graduated from medical school. These are not women in the sense of like the world sort of saying, show me all the degrees and titles you've had. But there are the women that instilled in me this sense that you are here, you are important, you are valuable. You're meant to do something. And when you take on what you're calling like a big challenge, is you're just taking on what's placed in front of you. And you do what you can to the best you can, without this sense of there's a bar I'm supposed to reach. I'm just supposed to do my best in this. And also an understanding, and I do whatever I do it with other people. So this is not about can I get my gold star or my badge for the day for what I'm doing, but rather about how can I with others just keep moving it forward, just keep moving it forward. And that's more the message that they sent. This as I look at some of the people I work with who wonder about are they worthy or do they belong, or did somebody make a mistake when they nominated me or put me forward, or et cetera. Those are not the kinds of things that I think about, because the ladies taught me that the reason you're here is because you worked hard to be here. The reason that you're here is because there's something you're supposed to do while you're here. And to not be wondering about should I or shouldn't I, or do I belong or do I not belong, but seizing the opportunity while you have it and then sort of going for it. That it's valuable, particularly in these times where I work in this diversity space, this diversity and inclusion and belonging space, where oftentimes people, they'll sort of question, is advancing diversity about changing values or changing, and for me, diversity is only about excellence. It's only ever been about excellence. It's how I was raised. It's about excellence. So it was never somebody did you a favor letting you in. No, they let you in because you belong here and you help them. But while you're here, what is it you're going to do to change the space you're in, to make it better, to make it more equitable, to make it more fair, to make it so others can come in behind you? And then how can I share this wonderful learning that I got from the ladies with other people? The privilege that I had to learn from them.
I feel like the theme that kind of comes out to me too is very impact driven versus self-driven. And it doesn't matter the people that you're surrounding yourself with are very much focused on, yes, you as an individual have that gift or have a specific contribution, but it's focusing again on that impact. And I think that allows for those types of conversations in those types of environments and spaces to be more interesting, to be more gracious, and to be more encouraging. Regardless, they don't have, everybody around you does not have to have the same degrees or titles or anything to actually fulfill the actual need, which is that we all have a purpose here, and let's make sure that we lift each other up to actually follow through on that purpose and be in those environments and create those. So I really, really like that.
And you use the word gift. And that's what I believe. I think that each of us is gifted in whatever way. And sometimes we don't recognize those gifts or we don't build on those gifts. But I think all of us have something to offer. And so that having something to offer is the programs I designed to help bring people through the door and move them forward. But it's also this understanding that in whatever I'm building, I need to do it with other people who will bring their own perspectives and insights and understandings, help me grow, help me change and learn as we do whatever we do together.
So now also, as we think about the future, what excites you about the future? And when someone says future and you kind of get giddy or try to think about like, oh, this is good, what it's going to look like, or this is what we can build, or what impact we can have. What do you say to that?
So if I think about the future, I'm going to tell you 3 different spaces. So anything I do always starts with family. So when I think about the future, I think about my grandchildren who are 9 and 10, who are wonderful. And watching them grow and explore and get excited and try to understand the world. To me, the future is about them and about these youth who will hopefully change all the craziness we see around us. Okay. So the first thing I think about is my grandchildren. That's family and that's home for me. In my work, I think about where Harvard Medical School is now. I think about where Harvard Medical School is in truly, as it has Harvard University, embracing inclusive excellence and embracing the fact that we want to be an anti-racist institution, which requires work. Building a culture of inclusive excellence requires work. But it moves us in this direction of understanding that for us to be the best that we can be means we have to have that diversity. We have to have people being able to bring the best of who they are and be able to contribute it to what we collectively do. We talk about being better together. And having moved over time, I've been there for a while, from people thinking of this work as something that a person or an office does to something that the whole institution owns. Everybody owns it. Everybody's responsible for moving it forward. And we will all be better if we embrace this and do this. So for me, that's exciting because an institution such as a Harvard Medical School and its leadership and its faculty and across the board have taken this on as the direction where we want to go. This is who we want to be. And then the third part for me, when I think about the future, I think about the individuals that I've had this privilege to train and mentor and educate who are rocking the world. I mean, they are, if you look at, what's going on now in terms of COVID, who are leading all sorts of efforts locally, nationally, in public and private places, and influencing what's happening, speaking up and saying what needs to be said and what people are hesitant to say, involved in the research and the clinical care and the public health and the policy, and watching them step forward, and leading and speaking up and just beginning to imagine where they're going to go into their future. So I think of those 3 things. I think in terms of my family, my grandchildren. I think in terms of where Harvard is and its potential to continue to grow. And I think about these remarkable young people. So that's my future.
Love it. I also love the focus on making certain topics a norm across wherever you are, regardless of not just talking about specific topics among committees or groups or organizations where these types of conversations become the norm across all touch points, which I think is also really, really exciting as we begin to especially highlight, from my space in terms of access to medications. And although we have been talking about it for so long, now, since more people that aren't maybe pharmacists or healthcare providers are interested in, how do we leverage it where those types of conversations become a norm? And so I like how you used Harvard as a wonderful example, because as you kind of begin to grow from college committee to university wide, to then have ripple effects across the various students and professionals you guys mentor throughout the years, for sure. Now, we are focused here a lot about also skills and thinking about, how do we position ourselves to meet future challenges? What skills do we need to start thinking about among ourselves or our organizations to begin to address any challenge that maybe it might be in our field? What do you think are some things we should focus on?
I think you can look at all the management and leadership books and courses and degrees, but I'm not going to start there. I actually think and it's a place I think that is often most neglected, is this place of self-reflection and this understanding what your true values are. What is it that you are willing to do and not do to move things forward? Understanding who you are. And in understanding who you are, you better understand where you need to be, the kind of organization you want to work in, the things you say yes to and the things you say no to. So for me, it's this understanding self and understanding that who you are, your values, I don't think really change, but who you are in terms of your priorities may change as you move through your life. So I see people who it's sort of like they want to beat themselves up because they're not leading or doing whatever it is somebody has told them they're supposed to do at a particular point in time, versus saying, I have to do it in my time, in my way, and take care of the priorities I have. So I remember early on in my career when I was being recruited to be an assistant dean at another medical school. This is before I was in a decanal position at Harvard. And I was a single parent, and it would have meant my moving with my daughter to a place where I would not have had the family supports. She would have not had the family connections. And I made a decision based on a priority about family, which I said to you before is important. With some people saying, but as a career move, you could have been in a decanal position earlier. And then for me to be able to say, but my priorities are my family, like that is my primary responsibility, and being clear about that. And not beating myself up because here's an opportunity I missed, but rather saying for this place and this time, this is the decision I need to make. So being very deliberate about that and weighing those values in there. And so for me, that's where I start. There's all these things about building the skills. I do think you should have some content expertise in something, with an understanding that that's just something. That because I've trained in medicine, pediatrics, and child psychiatry, public health, policy, business. Those are things, but that doesn't mean I can answer all questions, and that doesn't mean I can take on anything. What it means is I have lots of perspectives and ways of thinking. That sort of de-silo some of my thinking. And that de-siloing helps me understand all the things I don't understand. And so I need to be able to partner with, work with, bring other people together to come to a better outcome or conclusion or direction that we're going to face. And so it's getting solid about what you know in the content and continuing to grow, to read, to grow, to learn, but to also understand that you really create change with others. So part of this skill, part of it is how you build teams. How are you a team member? How are you a team leader? How do you work with others to create change? And I think those are the two places I would start. And in that, working with others comes this deep respect for other people and what they bring. Be it for the things that for me, where I can work with somebody in the academy or in a government agency or corporate space, and then work with the person that's in the community agency or community in the round, and understand that both deserve the same level of respect and both have perspectives that are equally important, and how to bring those together. So that respect for what others bring and their understanding and their perspective, critically important, particularly as we look at these issues around health disparities and changing the health status of populations. Lots of different players need to be in that game and in that space. So this understanding self in relationship to others and how you work with others, and having this content knowledge And I think the other part I would say is being willing to take risk, strategic risk, tactical risk, informed risk, but you don't go anywhere if you just sit in the same spot. And if you know yourself, and you know part of the world around you and the others that you're working with, you can step off the curve with an understanding that there's others around you who will help pull you back, but you can feel assured that you will land in a good place. So it's that taking risk. It's that believing in yourself, believing, again, that you have a purpose. I'm supposed to step off this curve because I'm supposed to be here about moving something forward. So those are probably the three I would start with, beyond all that other stuff that's in all the books and the courses and all those other places.
But those are extremely valuable, especially for people that are thinking a lot about, it might be an institutional challenge, but it might be these overarching challenges that we are living in a day-to-day basis, and everybody's realities and lived experiences are different. But I think when you're talking a lot about kind of knowing your value structure and kind of understanding where that and tying it in with the impact part is really important, because most people focus so much on one thing, just think about the impact, and then they get overwhelmed, not recognizing how they can actually do it. But kind of that order too of just like, what is your value structure? What can you provide? Recognizing that you still don't know a lot. And when you know that you don't know a lot, automatically you think, let's build a team.
Right.
Let's have that. So I was kind of thinking as a sequence too, that's so great, because it breaks down something, especially for those that want to make a lot of change. It breaks down something that's might be so overwhelming, because the issues might be so big and very systemic, or multiple factors, and it doesn't just pinpoint to one. So I think those are very valuable to think about, because then other elements of like, how do you learn, how do you work with someone, you really break down the details. But those are hard to do if you don't have what you had mentioned in terms of your basic foundation.
Right.
And the respect for others and being able to listen and to be in those environments is what gets your intervention so far, right? Or what makes it sustainable. So those are wonderful elements there.
And what I'd say to what you said is this issue, a couple things, but the last word you said was sustainable. So built in this is this understanding, again, you're going down this road, you're going down this path, and somebody will take this baton, or however you want it, whatever sort of analogy you want to use, and carry it after you. So as much as you may think you are all that, okay, you're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it.
You're really not. And you have a role, you have a piece in this, but others have a piece too and will carry it forward. So it's keeping that in mind. It's this sustainability. If this cause, if what you believe in, if what you want to dedicate yourself to is important to you, you don't want it to end with you. You want it to go on beyond you. And so that the word that you use there about sustainability is so very important. And how are you building those relationships so others can carry it forward, and not carry it forward in the way it's always been done before, but carry it forward in new ways, because they'll have new kinds of understandings that they'll bring to the table.
Yeah. And then they'd be able to build on it and make it better because of that. Yeah. I
Better
love
and
that
different.
One. Yeah, better and different. And especially since especially if you want to go across communities or across and your impact, there's no possible way you can represent or speak to everyone's realities, right? So having that analogy is so great. Now let's talk a little bit more about some current initiatives and items that you're working on that you'd like to, let's kind of start this off with some initiatives that you'd like to share with us.
I've talked a little bit about where we are at Harvard Medical School around this inclusive excellence and anti-racism. And that continues to move forward as we build it out and understand what that means for us. Because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to move in that direction. And I think we're still understanding what that means. And understanding what that means in an environment, a larger society that's trying to figure out where we are. We've gone through a whole lot of changes in our society recently. Not that we haven't always been going through changes, but where does it all fit in? How does this all fit together? So that's one piece. One of the things that really, an opportunity that I think exists now is these examples of ways in which coming together, we can do things that are so much greater than what we ever thought. So something as simple, which is not simple, as COVID, and how in such a short time we have been able to develop, science has moved us so that we have been able to develop vaccines in such a short time that are in my arm, okay? But that was people from different institutions, different disciplines, different spaces, public, private, across the board, sharing, coming together, challenging each other, working together. A wonderful example of how we were able to move rapidly and in a different way because we took down some of the silos and walls and barriers. So then it makes me think, what else could we do if we took down some of those silos, walls, and barriers? So for me, as you live in this space, so you have these vaccines and that moves rapidly, and that's the scientists working together, but not necessarily working closely with the clinicians and the population scientists and the social sciences. So you have this space where I've developed it, and all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, now I got to get it to people. And oh, I can get it to people, but they have to take it.
Yes.
And how do I deal with historical and current inequities, imbalances, and social structures that make people hesitant to take the vaccine? And start to understand that it's not good enough for it to just be the science that moves ahead. How do you move these other spaces ahead? And how do you do it in a way that, as part of the scientists are saying, we've learned this, how can we use this model of working together on other things? But for me, opening up the space to say, but maybe we also need to be working with the clinicians and the population and the social sciences and the communities as we're doing this, so we're all moving forward together. And so there's this opportunity now, I think, for us to see that we all need to rise together. It's not that one needs to move forward and the others can lag behind, that you have to pay attention to all of this. And that's part of my hope. I start to see some of the ways in which, say, leaders, industry leaders and other kind of leaders. I think about the work that has been led by Georges Benjamin and Tom LaVisse from the National Academy of Medicine, where the 6-year Black members of the National Academy came together, and there was something in the New York Times, they're doing a video, they're doing this other work. So they're leaders in science and medicine speaking to the Black community. So it's not speaking necessarily to their peers and colleagues in science, but saying, how can we work with community? Okay. It's the work that, say, Rhea Boyd with KP, Kaiser Permanente, others are doing. It's people coming together in different kinds of combinations and crossing boundaries. My hope is that we don't lose that. It's also my fear that we might lose it. This country, we are amazing at responding to crisis. And then when the crisis is not there, we tend to step back a little bit. My hope is that as eyes have been opened, that these other crises were brewing all along. So how do we keep this energy? How do we keep this momentum about crossing boundaries and working together to tackle things that feel almost intractable? And for me, it's in this space of disparities and inequities. And understand that science has a role there. Scientists have a role. Industry has a role. The academy, government, we all have a role in addressing this. And we will actually all be better if we work on this together. So for me, this exciting point in time for us to think differently. Now, if you say to me, do you know exactly what this product is going to be or what it's going to look like? No, but I love being in a space of working with others to be creative, to be innovative in thinking about what might be possible at this point in time that nobody would have dreamed of 5 years ago.
And I like that, even thinking about the pandemic is a great example in the vaccine in terms of what we can accomplish when we do work together and break those barriers, and kind of recognizing, that is, if you talk about it normally, it's just like, hey, everybody work together and have this collective need to impact positively. it sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. And it was a great reflection. And the example too that you gave, especially we saw with the pandemic, that it disproportionately impacted various different communities, right? And those types of communities, many of whom we haven't necessarily talked to when you implement those programs. So, okay, let's bring that to light and have that be a part of those conversations. So those links now, where it's trying to understand, not just understand communities that now these communities have a voice. Now they provide the information that is also needed to collectively make a difference there, right? And so those are very exciting as you're talking about it too, because we're trying to break those walls in terms of saying, what is the collective goal that we hope to achieve, recognizing that everyone has this type of information and perspective that will drive it forward, right? So if we did not speak to communities that we're helping, your interventions will only go so far, and they will likely not be effective. And then you don't want to just study what happened. You want to prevent any sort of disparities from happening. And so I think that, like you said, is so powerful, and it is definitely exciting. And I think it's a reality we live in now, because more people are exposed to information and you can educate yourself on those matters, but taking that next step, right? Like you had mentioned, to work with those
right now,
yeah.
But don't let off the fireworks yet. It's what are we learning? What can we take from this to move to the next level, to move it forward? And so for me, it's an exciting time. And it's an exciting time to just think creatively about, could we tackle some of this in a new way? Could we build different kinds of partnerships and collaborations to actually be able to address these issues? Not the same old players, they can be there, but bringing new people into the conversations and to the work. So exciting, very exciting to me.
So as you're looking, and as you have continued to build throughout your career, all these various programs, and because you're in the mindset of you're always going to improve because you're working with different individuals and bringing that in, is there a metric of success that you define, or do you kind of sit back and you're like, that was a success, or even within your own career thinking about the word success, or is that not really part of the vocabulary because there's a lot of work to be done?
So I'm going to say success has got to be a part of my vocabulary, because I get grants and funding and I have to be able to monitor.
I love that it's a very academic response. You're like, yes, it's great.
I have to be able to have outcomes and move forward. Well, it's an academic response, but it's a practical response.
Yes.
And it's a practical response. I worked for a long time in health centers and community settings. And it is good to want to do good, but it is also good to know if you did good. Yes. And so having this quality improvement, this lens of saying, did I accomplish what I set out to accomplish? Could I do it better? Should it be done another way? Is there something that's more effective? And always bringing that to the table. I don't consider that academic. I just consider it good practice in terms of how we live our life, and how to move those things forward. So that's always there. I guess I've been asked similar questions before about success. I don't think a lot about success. I think about, did we accomplish what we set out to do? And can we do it better? So I'm always on the, can we do it better? Can we do it different? What else can we bring to the table? And that's always there, at all times. So success is sort of like an endpoint to me. I'm not an endpoint on anything. Everything is still growing for me. But I've been asked before. I guess at some point I need to figure out what success is, but it's moving forward. It's just moving forward.
Yeah. From my understanding, as I'm listening to you, it's very outcomes driven in the sense that you need to recognize what those outcomes are. You need to be able to measure them and to know if you're moving forward, but to know that there's always a path forward. It's not that you're necessarily just there. So that's really great.
And it allows you to take, to recognize small and large victories. Sometimes I see people, they've set this goal that what I'm going to celebrate is when I reach the top peak of the mountain. And they're not looking at the hills and the achievements in between as they're on that journey. And so sometimes they feel disappointed and burnt out because it takes so long to get to the peak, as opposed to celebrating, wait a minute, I just climbed that hill. That was pretty awesome. I'm energized. All right, I'm ready to go for the next one. I mean, it's celebrating the path forward, the movement, and it gives you energy to keep on going. And for me, this understanding that mountain's gonna be there when I go. It's still gonna be there, and I will climb some of it, and that's okay. I think as leaders and as future leaders, to understand that there are victories that are large and small, and you need to start to recognize them for yourself, but also for the people that you work with, who can become discouraged sometimes or feel very tired in the work that they're doing. And to be able to step back and say, wait a minute, that was actually pretty good. We actually did something that we didn't think we could do. Now, tomorrow, let's get up and go out again.
I love that. I really like that. So let's now talk a little bit more about kind of the topic of leadership in general. And it's a big one. And like you even mentioned before, in terms of there's a lot of books and there's a lot of opinions about leadership. But when you think of leadership, is there a way that you describe a leader, or kind of when someone says leader, what do you begin to think about?
You know, when I think of a leader, I think of somebody who stepped up, who stepped forward. Sometimes because they've been preparing to step up, and sometimes because the challenge or obstacle or what was in front of them was something where they said something must be done, and they stepped up then. Not because they prepared, not because they read all the books and they got all the degrees, but because it was a need, and they responded to the need. And for me, in that leadership, it's not a need that comes from, I need to be a leader. There is a need in the world around me, in the people around me, or something around me. And I am compelled to be a part of addressing this need. And for me, that's where those leaders are born. You know, it's not because of the family you're born into necessarily, or the resources that you have behind you or that you don't have behind you. It's about being willing to take that step and to move forward and say, because here and now, something must be done. And I want to be a part of that. And that's how I think of the leader. I think of it, and in that space comes this, you know, as I talk about servant leadership and all these other things, built into that is you're responding to a need in society or a need around you. Also built into this is this awareness of otherness and other people and other components that's built in there, and engaging others and respect for yourself, and for other people. The leaders that I see that I marvel at are these people who live their values. You know, it's real clear where their beliefs lie and where their lines are, and they're acting on those values without a single definition of leader or leadership. But those are the kinds of things I think about it.
I like that. Now, our audience kind of vary in different stages of their career. They can be anywhere from students to top executives. Are there some leadership lessons or advice that you've had or that you experienced or kind of used for yourself, and any that you can provide for those at various stages of their career?
You know, so some of the things I've alluded to already. I think particularly I'm a Black woman, I'm a woman of color in a leadership position. And so this first part of knowing yourself and believing in yourself and understanding and believing I deserve to be here. Nobody was being super kind and nice. There's nobody that woke up one morning and said, let me give a deanship or a professorship to a Black woman. And that's why you have this, Joan. Okay, I deserve it. Okay, I did the work to be here. And it's for this believing in yourself and working hard to be where you are. So I think that's a first step, because part of the world around you may not agree, may not believe, may not understand, but how can you be sure in yourself of what you're doing? not so sure that you become, that you lose all humility and understanding that even when you think you know what you're supposed to be doing, it's that input from others that will help refine it and make it better. But staying true to who you are. So that belief in self, that being driven by your values in what you're doing, and being very clear about what you will and will not do. So where is that line? And I think about points in my career where it could have been a potential career breaker. It wasn't. Or I said, I will not do that because it's not how I believe people should act. And it wasn't that it was unethical. It just was not part of my value system. Being clear on that, so that you're making thoughtful decisions. I think sometimes we think we have to act so quickly that we don't step back, reflect, and think. That step back, reflect, and think about where I say no and where I say yes. So to follow up on a piece of that, particularly in moving into leadership and as a person of color, that you will find that because there are so few, which there shouldn't be, but there are so few, you will often be asked to do many things, to serve on many committees and be in many places. Become very thoughtful about where you say yes and where you say no. Again, is it aligned with your values? Is it taking you in a direction that will enable you to do the kinds of things you want to do? Will it allow you to expand your network and opportunities to be visible, to be seen, to influence and be influenced with others? In terms of where you say yes and where you say no, but be thoughtful about it. So that's that sort of yes and no part. Be willing again to take risks. Sometimes you do things in a way that you ask permission, and sometimes you do things not asking permission. I don't think you ever step down that unethical path, or paths that really jeopardize the people who have faith in you, the people who've hired you and are above you. So you're not trying to undermine them at any point in time. But sometimes the system needs a nudge, and you have to be willing to step out there and just do, and then ask for forgiveness later. So be prepared. I mean, part of this opportunity, you want to change things. You want to change what the world around you. You want to change the system. And sometimes it doesn't understand it needs to be changed. So be willing to step out there, grow, read, go to lectures, go to seminars, talk to other people. Yeah, at no point in your career or life do I think you should ever think I know enough. So always be open to learning and doing and things in different ways. And for me, I learn about things that are not necessarily in the fields in which I've trained. I learn about them in other places and other ways. And so I had never thought about that. That's an interesting approach to that. How can I take some of that? And then surround yourself with both people that can support you, because you're going to have some days that are dim, dull, not so good. And so how do you have the people around you who can help hold you up during those times? Surround yourself with people who will also be kindly critical. You know, the people who will say, you know, you think you got it all, but let me tell you, have you thought about maybe you should have done this differently? So you need those people who can be honest with you, and surround people that will push you to dream big, that will stand up there and say, go for it. I have your back, go for it. And then step out, just do it.
Okay. That's actually a great transition to our last question before we go into Q&A, because we do like to take an opportunity to support one another and really recognize the positive influence we have on one another. Can you name a woman who has inspired you, and why did you choose this person?
A woman. I can name lots of women. That's the problem.
We've had some name two. Right, so if you want to name two, you can go ahead and name two.
I'm gonna name two in very different ways.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start with my mother. Okay. Who I watched build things in community, from organizations to programs to things with the church, with the library, with the seniors group, to other kinds of things, who I watched move into various leadership positions, who was so much smarter than I will ever be, but grew up as a Black woman without the same kind of opportunities I have. So inspires me in saying that you take these gifts that you talked about and you do whatever you can with them. And that's always in the back of my mind. And then there's so many others, but if I had to name one right now, I would probably name Vivian Penn. And Vivian Penn is a pathologist who I think she trained at Massachusetts General Hospital, went to school in Virginia, trained at Massachusetts General Hospital, worked at Tufts for a while, was at Howard for a while. I think she was the first woman or first Black woman chair of the pathology department in the country, was the first leader of the Office for Women's Health, past president of the National Medical Association. So I've told you all these titles and all these positions. She is forever kind and gracious. She is forever mentoring and nurturing the people who are coming behind us. She is at all times a believer in creating change, in speaking up, in having your voice heard, and just an amazing role model, mentor, physician, scientist, woman.
It's incredible. I get excited. The exciting part about those two is not often the titles, like you mentioned, like I gave you the titles, but it's in the second part where you can really tell that those types of great human beings exist out there and are doing great work. And those types of influence and impact kind of has the ripple effects across yourself or those that they interact with, which is exciting. So now we're just opening it up to we have a few Q&A questions. So one of them is around diversity in leadership. So what does diversity in leadership mean to you? I think there's a lot of people that keep hearing about having diversity in leadership. So what does that mean to you?
So I'm going to come up with two parts about it. So oftentimes when people hear the word diversity, they think of people who are Black and brown, or they think of women. Heaven help them if they think of it, that could actually be Black and brown women. And so this concept of intersectionality. So for that diversity, it can be on multiple levels. Is it because of gender or sexual orientation or ability, disability? Is it because of race, ethnicity? Is it because of geography and where you grew up? Is it because of culture or language? All of those are part of diversity to me, that each of us represents different aspects of diversity. Even as we talk about that though, there's this recognition and realization that there are certain groups within our country that have been deliberately, intentionally, systematically blocked from moving forward into leadership. That when I talked about having this seat at the table, they haven't even been allowed to look in the window at the table to see that there was a seat that they might hold. Okay. So for me, you cannot tell me that you've achieved diversity if you have still if you still enabled a system to relegate those who have always been on the margins to stay on the margins, that they have got to be left in that, brought into that space. And so part of that diversity in leadership is those differences being included. And not just allowed in the door, but how do you rise? You know, if you have that seat at the table, could you actually figure out who else could be invited to the table? Could you set the agenda at the table? Could you, it's all of that. Don't just give me a title and then don't let my voice be heard. Okay, don't just give me a title and not make it seem that what I say is important and valued and it's added to the deliberations and it has an impact on the outcomes. So that's part of that diversity in leadership and parts of my thinking in that space.
That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. It's not just you being physically there or by name or title, but the actual influence and power that you're able to have when you are there. for yourself, and like we had mentioned, which is an absolute wonderful theme, is for the others as well that will come after you.
And don't give me the title and not the other things that go with it.
Yeah.
Don't give me the work and not give me the title, but you give the title to other people. Don't give me the title and pay me less than you pay other people. And don't give me the same kind of respect that you give other people. All of that's embedded in there.
Yeah. So this for us actually is the final question, because we're running short on time, but we can literally talk about this for hours. So there is a question on what advice do you have for those that are interested in and maybe are new to the space of health equity or addressing social determinants of health?
Right. So I think for their partly read. It does not take a lot. I mean, you can think about the IOM's Unequal Treatment as a baseline book to be able to understand. I think it came out in 2002 or somewhere around there, really talking about health inequities and health disparities and giving both a scientific basis and this understanding that they are everywhere. AHRQ comes out with an annual report around these kinds of issues. If you look at Healthy People that comes out every 10 years, there's more on it in that space. But talk to the people around you, talk to the people in the associations that work in this space. Read the newspaper, read the articles. This stuff is not far from you. It's not far removed. Part of what you can do is step out of your bubble. If your bubble has no diversity in it, so that you're not only talking to people who look like you, you're probably not learning about the lives of other people around you. So spread out from there. Learn from other people and ask about, not ask in a sense of voyeurism and tell me about your pain and all that stuff, but ask because I want to understand. I want to understand others' lives. I want to understand that the world operates in different ways. So be open to learning, be open to growing, be open to asking questions, move beyond your safety zone.
I love that. So we are about at time. Any other final remarks or anything before we start closing out?
No, I think, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to me or giving me an opportunity to answer your questions. And for those who are out there and feeling this nudge or push or pull to move towards leadership, I'm going to say follow it. You are needed. We need bright, talented, innovative people to carry this march forward, and join the ranks and lead. I'll follow you.
Love it. Well, on behalf of Salus Vitae Group and myself, I would like to thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all of your experiences and your outlooks. This has been so great. I literally want to talk to you for hours on end. So there are several actionable items that we talked about, different thought processes. Definitely one that I keep thinking about is not only where I can make an impact, but how we continue to open doors, bring those seats, amplify voices of those that can make an impact. So we have several exceptional leaders in the coming weeks, so please join us for other events. You can visit us at salusvitaegroup.com to register for those events. And again, please, if you share anything and you would like us to see what you took away from this session, you're welcome to tag us at Salus Vitae Group or contact us and let us know. So thank you all for attending, and thank you so much, Dr. Reede.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Be safe.
Bye. You too.